That day had been utterly exhausting. Friday. Finally. The end of the week. I was at college, already drained after a full day of work. Fatigue overtook me, and without realizing it, I fell asleep at my desk, head resting on my books. When I awoke, the silence was oppressively heavy. The classroom light flickered, failing intermittently, and with a start, I realized the college lights were already shutting down. I woke up startled, my body heavy, mind foggy, as if time had stretched and swallowed me whole. Looking around, I saw only the security guard remaining, watching me with a strange look. He asked, his voice deep, "What are you still doing here?" I quickly explained that I had fallen asleep and lost track of time. He, with an impersonal tone, instructed me, "Go home. It's late. You'll miss the train home." Reflexively, I dashed into the night. The air was slightly colder, typical of an autumn evening, but the fear made me forget the chill. I was so eager not to miss the train that I didn't even check the time. Anxiety consumed me. The train, I needed to catch it, as quickly as possible. The run to the station felt longer than usual. The fear of missing my last chance to get home blinded me to everything else. I arrived at the station and, without much thought, entered through an entrance I didn't usually use. The corridor was darker than I remembered. The lights flickered, seeming to fail with each step. I felt uneasy there. But the train. That damn train was near. I ran through the corridor to the platform, and that's when I noticed something strange. I had never boarded from that entrance before. The place was too gloomy, as if it were a shortcut to somewhere far removed from everything I knew. But the idea of turning back and finding another entrance didn't cross my mind. I needed to catch the train. I needed to leave. Then, I heard the train sound. That familiar noise that should have brought comfort, but somehow made my stomach churn. I looked toward the dark tunnel from which the train would emerge. But something was different. The train didn't look the same. Something was wrong. I couldn't pinpoint it, but with my body weighed down by fatigue, I boarded. What else could I do? The train was there, and I was too exhausted to question it. I quickly noticed something was off. The train was filled with people I'd never seen before. Not a single familiar face. Everyone sat in total silence, with vacant stares, like they weren't fully present. I felt watched, but not the kind of glance you catch by accident. This was different. It was like they all knew something I didn't. I sat by the window next to a woman. She was unusually still, staring out as if the view outside belonged to another world. I, on the other hand, was growing increasingly uneasy. I could feel their eyes on me, every single one of them. It was as if some invisible presence was stalking me inside that train. Then the woman beside me slowly turned her head and locked eyes with mine. Her stare burned into my skin. And then she asked, calmly, but with a weight in her voice, "You're not going to Xarathiel, are you?" I froze. That name, Xarathiel. It struck something deep inside me. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her right. Did she say something else? But she didn't repeat it. She just turned her head again. That's when another voice cut through the silence. A woman sitting ahead of us leaned out into the aisle and said, "This train's headed to Xarathiel, kid. You should get off." I scanned the cabin. Every passenger, every single person was now staring at me. Not blinking, not moving. Their faces blank, but intense. I had the distinct, horrifying feeling that I was in the wrong place, in the wrong train. A third woman stood in the aisle, closer now. She looked right at me. "You need to get off," she said. "Now." My whole body tensed. I didn't know what to do. The pressure was overwhelming. Something in my throat tightened, like my body was bracing for something terrible. I still couldn't move. Then a man with a briefcase stepped forward. His face was more stern, almost angry. "Get off. Now, before it's too late." I didn't know what was happening, but I knew I had to listen. The train began to slow as we reached the next station. The screech of the brakes echoed through the car, loud and violent. I didn't hesitate. I stood up, even though I didn't know if there would be another train to get me home. Something told me, this is your only chance. As the doors opened, the other passengers silently moved aside, clearing a path like it had all been rehearsed. I stepped off. As I stepped onto the platform, the doors shut behind me, and the train disappeared into the tunnel, swallowed by the dark like it had never been there at all. I was alone. The platform was silent, unnaturally so. No humming lights, no distant announcements, no wind. Just a heavy, unnatural stillness. The street beyond the station looked off. Wrong. Narrow, dimly lit, with buildings I didn't recognize. The lights above flickered, erratic, like they were malfunctioning or trying to blink a message in Morse code. I walked a few steps forward. Nothing felt familiar. It was like the world had been rearranged by someone who had only heard descriptions of it, like a dream trying to impersonate reality. I couldn't name what was wrong, but I felt it, deep in my stomach. Like something vital had been replaced with a hollow imitation. The train was gone. The streets I used to walk felt warped, distorted. The kind of place where corners didn't meet right, and shadows formed in places where they shouldn't. I tried to breathe, but even the air felt heavier, thicker, as if this version of the city wasn't meant to support human life for too long. And then, headlights. A car turned the corner, its beam cutting through the fog that had settled around me. It honked once, sharp and loud. A jolt ran through me. It was like a switch flipped. Everything snapped back into focus. Suddenly, the buildings looked right again. The street signs were legible. I was in the real world. Or, I thought I was. But something was still wrong. The name. Xarathiel. It wouldn't leave me? It echoed in my head like a song stuck on repeat. Only this one wasn't catchy. It was invasive. The train. The people. The look in their eyes. All of it kept playing back in my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about that name. What it meant. Where it came from. Why it felt so familiar. Like something buried inside me had just been unearthed. That was the beginning. Not of fear, but of obsession. Since that night, something inside me changed. At first, I tried to play it off. I chalked it up to exhaustion, to stress, to my overloaded schedule. I told myself it had just been a vivid hallucination. Nothing more. But even when I tried to ignore it, the name stayed. Burned into my brain like a scar I couldn't stop tracing with my thoughts. Xarathiel. It started showing up in small ways. I'd see jumbled letters on street ads that almost spelled it. Scribbles in alleyways. Fine print on contracts that seemed to rearrange themselves into that name. One time, I swear I heard a professor say, Zara, mid-sentence before catching himself and moving on, like it had slipped out by accident. The dreams came next. Dim corridors, screeching metal, dark silhouettes waiting at stations I didn't recognize, and a voice, always just out of sight, whispering my name, whispering for me to come back. During the day, I smiled. I laughed. I studied. But at night, the train returned. Not in the physical world, but in my mind. Always the same. A platform swallowed in shadow. Footsteps behind me. And the sound of an approaching train that never stopped. In every dream, I woke up before, stepping on board. Every time. Like something, or someone, was waiting for the right moment. Eventually, I gave in. I started searching. I typed Xarathiel into search engines, into obscure forums, Reddit threads, deep social media rabbit holes. Nothing. No hits. No articles. Not a single official mention. It was like the word had been erased from the world. But I knew others had been there. I could feel it. The way some people looked at me when I said the name. Some laughed. Some brushed me off. But one person, a user with a scrambled username, finally responded in a forum buried deep in a conspiracy thread. You saw the train, didn't you? You got off in time. But it'll come back. It always does. I deleted the message minutes later. My skin crawled. It felt like they were watching me through my screen. I started covering my webcam, turning off my Wi-Fi at night. I know it sounds crazy, and maybe it is. But maybe it's not. I began keeping a notebook. Inside, I drew what I remembered. The train's interior, the people who stared, the woman who spoke to me, the symbol on the side of the car, the texture of the seats. And the more I drew, the more I remembered. As if something was feeding me pieces of a puzzle that only made sense from the other side. Then something happened that finally broke me. One random morning, I boarded the subway for school. As I stepped in, a woman stood up and offered me her seat. I nodded and sat down. When I turned to thank her, she was gone. No footsteps. No doors opening. No one around me even noticed she had been there. It was like she had never existed. On the seat beside me was a note, handwritten in a familiar looping script. The entrance was wrong, but the exit was right. We see you. Xarathiel still wants you. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. I looked around. No one was looking at me. No one even seemed to know I was there. In that moment, I realized it wasn't over. It had never been over. In fact, it was probably just beginning. I couldn't tell anymore if I was awake or dreaming. The name, Xarathiel, was no longer a whisper in my mind. It was a constant presence. A quiet scream echoing behind everything I did. Whether I was working, eating, walking, it was there. Just out of reach, like a shadow cast by something I could never see. Sometimes it came as thoughts that didn't feel like mine. Other times I'd catch it lurking in reflections, scrambled letters, faint sounds from a distant radio, like a secret frequency only I could hear. I started avoiding trains altogether. I walked everywhere, miles even. Anything to stay off the rails. But it didn't matter. Even out in the open, even under the sun, I felt like I was still walking on tracks. Like there was another world beneath this one, humming, waiting, watching. One night, I dreamed I was in my room. Everything looked normal at first, but the air, it was heavier, like I was breathing underwater. I stepped to the window and looked outside. It wasn't my neighborhood. It looked like it, but twisted. Too still. Too clean. Too wrong. The kind of quiet you hear in a place that's been abandoned for too long. And in the sky, written in thick black smoke, was the name. Xarathiel. Not a warning. Not a message. Just a presence. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. My alarm read 3:33 a.m. The silence in the room wasn't just quiet. It was loud. Suffocating. In the days that followed, I started feeling watched. Not by people, but by something else. At school. On the streets. In the mirror. I never saw anyone, but I knew something was observing me. Not constantly, but when I was alone. Vulnerable. Exposed. I thought about seeing a therapist. A priest. Someone. But how do you explain this? That a name, just a name, was destroying your life? That something no one else could see was inside you? One afternoon, I wandered into an old secondhand bookstore downtown. It smelled like mildew and dust and secrets. In the back, I found a book with no cover, no title. Just brittle pages filled with strange sketches. Train tunnels, shadowy figures, empty rail cars. And on one page in the center, scrawled in ink that looked burned into the paper, Xarathiel isn't a place. It's an invitation. I closed the book instantly, took it with me. Didn't pay. I didn't care anymore. I started questioning everything. Was that train even real? Were those people ever really there? Was I real? One night, I stared into the bathroom mirror. I barely recognized myself. Sunken eyes, pale skin. And for one moment, just one, I saw myself wearing a train conductor's uniform, like I had become a part of it. I blinked. Gone. But the chill in my spine stayed. That's when I finally understood. I didn't need to ride the train again to reach Xarathiel, because Xarathiel was already inside me, in my thoughts, in my voice, in the way I moved through the world. And the question I used to ask, what is Xarathiel, was no longer relevant. Now the real question was, when will I go back? Weeks passed since that night. Time moved on. At least, that's what I tried to convince myself. I went back to class, back to work. I smiled when I needed to, answered when people talked to me. I laughed at jokes. But underneath it all, the name was still there, pulsing in the back of my mind like a second heartbeat. Xarathiel. Even when I tried to forget, my body remembered. I stopped researching, burned the notebook, threw away the drawings. I made a vow not to write or say the name again. I thought distance would kill it, that if I ignored it long enough, it would fade away. But I didn't have to look for Xarathiel anymore. It was already looking for me. It started with small things. A coworker called me by name. But just for a second, I heard something else. Like he said, "You again," before correcting himself. At a bakery, the cashier asked if I wanted the usual. But I had never been there before. People seemed to recognize me. Not kindly. No. Like they knew me from somewhere they wished they could forget. I started fearing mirrors. Not for what I looked like, but because once, just once, I caught my reflection blink before I did. I didn't scream. I didn't tell anyone. Because part of me knew it might be real. Or worse, only real for me. The dreams returned. But now, I wasn't on the train anymore. I was watching it. From outside. Parked on a quiet street that shouldn't have train tracks, sat a dark, silent rail car. The windows black. And inside, me. Dozens of versions of me, staring out at me. Expressionless. Smiling. I woke up with a scratch on my arm. Thin, but deep. Like a fingernail dragged slowly and intentionally across my skin. I had no memory of doing it. But the blood was real. And once again, I told no one. I tried avoiding anything train-related. No stations, no tunnels, no tracks. But the world has a way of reminding you of what you want to forget. One morning, waiting for a bus, I noticed a man reading a newspaper. Totally normal. Until I caught the headline in the corner. Barely visible, faded print. Strange disappearance on the gray line. Witness describes unusual passengers. It was my story. Not word for word. But the feeling. The horror. It was mine. I approached the man, heart pounding. But he was gone. Just the paper on the bench. When I picked it up, every page was blank. I went home shaking. And that's when I realized what I had really lost. Not my sanity, not my sleep, but my place in this world. Xarathiel didn't have to take me. It only had to make sure I no longer belonged anywhere else. The name still lives in me. But now, it hurts. Not like a memory, like a scar. One that burns when something dark is coming. That's all I have left. A name. A memory that won't leave. And a question I can't stop asking. What if I never left the train? I've never stepped on a train again. Sometimes I think that's what saved me. Other times, I'm sure it only delayed the inevitable. It's been long enough that the world thinks I've moved on. But I know better. I never really left that car. Maybe my body got off, but my mind, my name, my shadow stayed behind. And I still hear it. The sound of tracks echoing in the distance, even when there are no trains. The whisper of a door closing behind me, even when I'm home, alone. And always, the name. Xarathiel. It shows up when I'm tired, when I drop my guard, when I'm slipping between sleep and wake. I see it in jumbled letters, in half-remembered dreams, in the way strangers stare a little too long. And maybe you think I'm crazy. Maybe this whole story sounds like fiction. Maybe you're right. But if one night you find yourself on a train, late, alone, and the passengers are too quiet, too still, and a woman turns to you and asks, "You're not going to Xarathiel, are you?" Don't answer. And for the love of whatever's real in this world, get off at the next stop. And if it's already too late, if you hear your name whispered by lips that aren't there, then welcome. You heard it too.
Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever heard of Xarathiel? Have you ever felt like you slipped into a place that didn't belong in this world? If you've seen something no one else seems to remember, share your story in the comments. You might not be as alone as you think. And if this is your first time hearing about Xarathiel, just be careful when you board your next train.